The young woman was named Aisha. She was a student, just like many others her age, but her life was much harder than most. She came from a small town where opportunities were few, and her family didn't have much money. Her parents had worked hard to save enough so she could go to college, but every day was a struggle. She studied during the day and worked part-time jobs in the evenings to pay her tuition and support herself. Her clothes were simple, and she often felt invisible among her wealthy classmates. But despite everything, Aisha had big dreams. She wanted to become a successful lawyer one day, to help people who didn't have a voice. One evening, there was a special charity event in the city. It was a grand gathering where wealthy people came to donate money to help education for underprivileged children. Aisha's college had sent her to help as a volunteer, handing out invitations and greeting guests. She felt nervous because she was surrounded by people in expensive suits and sparkling dresses. She was shy but tried to do her best. It was her first time in such a fancy place, and she felt out of place, but also curious. Among the guests was a man named Mr. Richard Lawson. He was a billionaire, known in the news for his massive businesses and luxury lifestyle. He was in his late 70s, but carried himself with pride and confidence. His silver hair and sharp eyes gave him a striking look. Despite his age, he was charming and kind, and many people admired him. He had a reputation for being generous, especially towards causes that helped young people and education. As the event went on, Aisha found herself standing near the refreshments table, trying to stay out of the way but ready to help anyone who needed it. Suddenly, she noticed Mr. Lawson approaching. He smiled warmly and asked if she needed any help. Surprised by his kindness, she answered politely. They started talking, and she realized he was easy to talk to, not like the other wealthy guests, who seemed distant or busy. Mr. Lawson asked her about her studies and her dreams. Aisha hesitated at first, unsure if she should open up, but his genuine interest made her comfortable. She told him about her struggles, how she worked hard every day but still worried about money. Mr. Lawson listened carefully, nodding and encouraging her. He shared stories from his own life, about how he had started with nothing and built his empire through hard work and determination. The conversation lasted longer than either expected. Aisha felt a strange mix of excitement and disbelief. Here was a man who seemed so different from her world, yet he was listening to her as if she mattered. Other guests started to notice, some whispering about the unusual pair, the young, poor student and the old, rich billionaire. But Aisha didn't care. For the first time in a long while, she felt hopeful. After the event, Mr. Lawson asked if she would meet him again. He said he wanted to help her, not just with money, but with advice and guidance. Aisha was hesitant but curious. She had heard stories about wealthy men who only wanted something in return, but Mr. Lawson seemed different. She agreed cautiously. In the days that followed, they met several times. He invited her to his office, to his favorite cafe, and even to some cultural events. Each time he treated her with respect and kindness. He encouraged her to believe in herself and work hard. Slowly, Aisha started to see a different side of life, one filled with possibilities. But not everyone was happy about their growing friendship. Some of Aisha's friends warned her to be careful. They whispered that Mr. Lawson might have selfish reasons or that she was getting involved in something too complicated. Aisha tried to ignore the doubts. She wanted to believe in the good she saw. At the same time, Mr. Lawson's family noticed the attention he was giving to Aisha. His children and relatives were protective and suspicious. They worried he might be taken advantage of because of his age and wealth. They warned him too, telling him to be cautious. But Mr. Lawson was stubborn. He saw something special in Aisha, a spark of life and ambition that reminded him of himself at a younger age. As weeks passed, their relationship grew stronger. What started as a chance meeting at a charity event turned into regular conversations and shared moments. Aisha felt like she had found a friend, a mentor, and maybe something more. Mr. Lawson felt young again, inspired by her energy and dreams. Despite the huge difference in their lives and ages, they found comfort in each other's company. The world around them buzzed with questions and judgments, but inside, they felt something real and honest. One evening, after a quiet dinner in Mr. Lawson's mansion, he surprised Aisha by asking her to marry him. She was stunned. The idea seemed impossible. Why would a billionaire want to marry a poor student like her? But looking into his eyes, she saw sincerity. It wasn't just about money or status. It was about connection, trust, and a desire to build something new together. Aisha agreed, still unsure what the future held but willing to take a chance. The news shocked everyone, her friends, her family, even strangers in the city. They wondered what she had gotten herself into, but for Aisha, it felt like a new chapter was beginning. She had no idea how this decision would change her life forever, or what secrets would soon be revealed. After Aisha said yes to marrying Mr. Richard Lawson, her life changed almost overnight. The whirlwind of events that followed was something she never could have imagined, and it all happened so fast that sometimes it felt like she was dreaming. Richard, the elderly billionaire, seemed happier than he had been in years. His eyes sparkled with a new kind of excitement, and his smile grew wider whenever he was near her. From the moment the engagement was announced, Richard showered Aisha with attention and gifts. He made sure she never wanted for anything. Her small, worn-out clothes were quickly replaced by beautiful dresses, fine shoes, and expensive accessories. But even more than the material things, he gave her time and care, which she had never really experienced before. For Aisha, this was like stepping into a new world, a world where money was no longer a problem, and where she could breathe a little easier. Friends and family on both sides were surprised. Aisha's relatives were worried and confused. They saw the vast difference between her and Richard and feared she might get hurt. "How can someone so old marry someone so young?" they whispered. "Is this really love, or is it just money?" Her close friends were also unsure. Some tried to support her, while others warned her to be cautious, fearing she might be taken advantage of. Richard's family reacted even more strongly. His children, who were much closer to his age, were not happy at all. They saw Aisha as an outsider trying to enter their world. They didn't trust her motives and warned Richard against rushing into anything. They tried to convince him to slow down, to think about what this marriage would mean for their family name and fortune. But Richard was firm. He said that Aisha made him feel alive again, and he was ready to take a chance. As the days passed, Aisha and Richard's relationship grew closer. They spent a lot of time together, sharing stories and learning about each other's lives. Richard loved to listen to Aisha talk about her dreams and her struggles. He admired her courage and determination. Aisha, in turn, found Richard's wisdom and kindness comforting. He was patient with her, never pushing her too fast, and always encouraging her. They went on trips together, visiting places Richard loved, and introducing Aisha to his world of luxury and business. Aisha saw the beautiful art collections, the grand houses, and the busy life of a billionaire. It was all so new and overwhelming, but Richard made sure she never felt alone. He held her hand and explained things with care. Despite the excitement, there were moments when Aisha felt scared and unsure. She wondered if she really belonged in this world. Sometimes she missed her old life and the simple joys she once had. But Richard's support helped her stay strong. He told her that it was okay to feel uncertain and that he would be there every step of the way. One day, Richard surprised Aisha with a private dinner in a beautiful garden behind his mansion. Soft lights hung from the trees, and the air smelled of fresh flowers. They talked about their future and the life they could build together. Richard told Aisha that he wanted to make her happy and promised to protect her from anything that could hurt her. In that moment, Aisha felt truly special and loved. The wedding day arrived quickly. It was a small, private ceremony with close friends and family. Aisha wore a simple but elegant white dress, and Richard looked dashing in his suit. When they exchanged their vows, there were tears in both their eyes. They promised to be there for each other, no matter what challenges lay ahead. But not everyone at the wedding was happy. Some guests whispered and exchanged looks. Richard's family stayed distant, and some of Aisha's friends stayed silent. The world around them was filled with judgment and doubt. People talked about how unusual their marriage was, and some even called it a mistake. Still, Aisha and Richard didn't let the negativity affect them. They believed in their love and wanted to build a new life together. After the wedding, Aisha moved into Richard's mansion. It was huge and filled with things she had only seen in movies. The rooms were decorated with expensive furniture, and there were gardens that stretched for acres. It was beautiful, but also a little lonely. Richard made sure Aisha was comfortable. He hired helpers to assist her and gave her space to adjust to her new life. But even in the luxury, Aisha sometimes felt like she was living in a bubble, far from the real world she had known. She missed her friends and the simple joys of her old life. As they settled into married life, Aisha noticed small things that seemed strange. Richard was sometimes distant, lost in thought. He received phone calls that he took in private, and often locked some rooms in the mansion. Aisha didn't want to worry, but her curiosity grew. One afternoon, while Richard was away on a business trip, Aisha decided to explore the mansion. She wandered through the hallways, admiring the art and antiques, until she came across a door that was always locked. She wondered what was behind it, but told herself not to pry. Later that week, Richard returned, and they spent quiet evenings together. But Aisha's mind was restless. She felt there was something she didn't know about her husband, something hidden. She wanted to trust him completely but couldn't shake the feeling that he was keeping secrets. Despite these worries, their days were filled with moments of happiness. Richard took Aisha to concerts, fine restaurants, and even a weekend getaway by the sea. They laughed, danced, and talked about dreams and plans. For Aisha, these moments were precious, reminding her why she had said yes in the first place. But as the week went by, the questions in Aisha's mind grew louder. She knew she had to find out the truth about Richard's secret. What was he hiding, and how would it change their life together? Aisha's life had already changed so much in the past weeks. From being a poor student struggling to make ends meet, she had suddenly become the wife of a billionaire. She had been swept up in a whirlwind of luxury, mystery, and emotions. But nothing had prepared her for the shocking discovery she was about to make. It happened one quiet afternoon, when Richard had gone out on a business trip. The mansion was unusually silent, except for the soft ticking of the grand clock in the hallway. Aisha felt restless. Despite the comfort and wealth surrounding her, there was still a part of her that felt uneasy, a small voice inside that whispered. She needed to know the whole truth. She had been thinking a lot about the locked door she had opened once before, and the secret room filled with old letters and medical reports. But there was another place in the mansion she had never been allowed to enter. Richard had told her it was private and that she should not worry about it. But curiosity gnawed at her. That day, Aisha decided to find out what Richard was hiding. She walked through the long corridors, her footsteps soft on the polished floors. She passed the study, the library, the art gallery, and finally reached the basement door. This door was heavier and looked even more secure than the others. It was always locked, and no one ever spoke about what was down there. Her heart pounded as she searched for the key. She remembered seeing a small key hidden in a flower pot outside. Maybe it worked here too? To her surprise, it did. She unlocked the heavy door and slowly stepped inside. The basement was large and dimly lit. As her eyes adjusted, she saw rows of shelves filled with boxes and files. But what caught her attention was a large steel safe in the corner. It was old but sturdy with a complex lock system. Her hands trembled as she opened the safe. Inside she found documents, photographs, and a strange box wrapped in velvet. With trembling fingers, she opened the box. Inside was a small device that looked like a watch, but with strange buttons and a glowing screen. Along with it was a letter addressed to her, written in Richard's handwriting. The letter was a confession. It explained things Aisha had never imagined. Richard was not just a billionaire businessman, he was also involved in secret work that no one knew about. For years he had been protecting something very valuable, something that could change the world or destroy it. The device was a key to a hidden invention Richard had developed, a technology so powerful that many people would kill to get it. The letter warned Aisha to be careful and to trust only a few close friends. Aisha's mind raced. She had thought she was marrying a simple old man, but now she realized he was living a double life. The secrets were bigger than she had ever dreamed. She felt scared but also determined. She knew she had to be strong and help Richard protect this secret. Just then she heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Richard appeared, his face serious but calm. He saw the device in her hands and nodded. It was time to tell her everything. Richard shared the full story. Years ago he had discovered a breakthrough technology, something that could change energy production forever. But powerful companies and governments wanted to steal it for themselves. To keep it safe, Richard had hidden it away, living a quiet life while protecting his secret. He explained why he had kept it from Aisha at first. He didn't want to put her in danger before they were married and trusted each other completely. Now, he said, she was part of his life and his secret. Aisha listened carefully, trying to understand the weight of the responsibility she had just accepted. The life she thought she knew had become much more complicated. She was no longer just a student or a billionaire's wife. She was a guardian of a powerful secret. The days that followed were tense and full of challenges. Aisha and Richard worked together to make plans to protect the invention. They hired trusted security, changed their routines, and stayed alert for any signs of trouble. Aisha learned quickly how to navigate this dangerous new world. She was no longer afraid to ask questions and faced each challenge with courage. Their relationship grew stronger through this shared secret. They relied on each other more than ever. Richard admired Aisha's strength and intelligence, and Aisha found comfort in Richard's experience and calmness. But danger was never far away. Strange things began to happen. One night, Aisha noticed a shadowy figure near the mansion's gate. Another time, their communications were mysteriously interrupted. They knew that enemies were watching, waiting for a chance to strike. Despite the threats, Aisha remained determined. She refused to let fear control her life. Instead, she focused on learning everything she could to protect Richard and the secret. One afternoon, while going through old files, Aisha found more surprises. She discovered letters from Richard's past, revealing that he had faced betrayals and losses that had made him wary of trusting others. Some of these betrayals came from people he once called friends and family. This made Aisha understand why he had been so secretive and protective. She realized that marrying Richard was not just about love. It was about trust and loyalty in the face of danger. She promised herself to stand by him no matter what. As the days went on, the couple prepared for the future. They planned to reveal the invention to the world when the time was right, when it was safe. Until then, they would protect it at all costs. Aisha's life had changed completely. From a poor student dreaming of a better future, she had become part of a world filled with secrets, dangers, and responsibilities beyond her imagination. But through it all, she found a new strength inside herself. The love she shared with Richard was no longer just a simple story of a young woman and an old billionaire. It was a story of courage, trust, and a promise to protect something precious. Aisha knew that the days ahead would be difficult. There would be challenges, threats, and sacrifices. But she was ready. She was no longer the same girl who had walked into that mansion weeks ago. She was now a partner in a dangerous game, a guardian of a secret that could change everything. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Aisha and Richard would face it together. Aisha had settled into her new life in Richard's vast mansion, but something felt different now. The first few days after the wedding had been filled with excitement and wonder. She had admired the grandeur of the place, the delicate art on the walls, the sparkling chandeliers, and the beautiful gardens outside. But as the days passed, little things started to make her feel uneasy. Richard was still the same kind man she had fallen for, but now she saw moments when he was distant. His smiles seemed less bright, and sometimes he would stare off into space as if lost in a heavy thought. He spent long hours in his study, behind a door that was always closed. He took private phone calls she was never allowed to hear. And there were occasional visitors who came and left without Aisha ever meeting them. At first she thought maybe this was just part of his busy life as a billionaire, but slowly, her curiosity and worry grew. One afternoon, Aisha found herself wandering through the mansion's hallways, feeling both amazed and a little lonely. The house was enormous, and many rooms were locked or had signs saying, "Private." She understood the need for privacy but wondered what was hidden behind those doors. Aisha had never lived in such a place before. Back in her old apartment, she knew every corner and every sound. Here, she felt like a guest in a castle. She barely understood. She remembered the locked door she had seen a few days ago, one that Richard always made sure was closed. She had tried not to think about it, but the mystery nagged at her mind. What could be so important that it had to be kept secret? Was it something dangerous? Or maybe something from his past that he didn't want her to know? Aisha's thoughts raced. She loved Richard, but she also knew she had to find the truth. She didn't want to live with secrets. One evening, after Richard had gone to bed, she quietly got up and walked toward the locked door. Her heart beat fast, and her hands trembled a little as she tried to find a way to open it. She looked around to make sure no one was watching, and then carefully searched for a key. To her surprise, she found a small key hidden under a nearby flower pot on the porch, something that seemed almost like an invitation or a test. Taking a deep breath, she unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit and filled with old photographs, documents, and strange objects she couldn't understand. It looked like a private study or a secret archive. On one wall, there were pictures of Richard from many years ago, along with letters and newspaper clippings. Aisha slowly realized that these were pieces of his life story, parts he had never shared with her. She picked up a letter and started reading. It told a story of challenges and pain, of losses that had shaped Richard's life. He had been through difficult times, business failures, family conflicts, and even health problems. But what shocked her most was a folder marked with the word health. Inside, she found medical reports revealing that Richard had a serious illness he had kept hidden. Aisha's heart sank. She felt a mix of emotions: concern, sadness, and confusion. Why hadn't he told her? Had he wanted to protect her from worry? Or was there something more he was afraid to reveal? Just then she heard footsteps coming down the hallway. Panicked, she quickly closed the door and returned the key to its hiding place. Richard appeared at the door looking tired but calm. He didn't seem angry or upset. Instead, he looked at Aisha with a quiet sadness in his eyes. They sat down together, and Richard began to explain. He told her about the illness, how it had been a secret for many years, how he had fought it alone, and how he didn't want it to affect anyone he loved. He said that telling her now was one of the hardest things he had done, but he trusted her. Aisha listened carefully. She felt a deep respect for Richard's courage and honesty. She realized that behind the wealth and power, he was just a man, vulnerable and human like everyone else. She reached out, took his hand, and promised to be by his side no matter what. In the following days, Aisha tried to learn more about the illness and how she could support Richard. She read books, asked doctors questions, and made plans to help him stay healthy. It was a new role for her, no longer just a student or a wife, but a caregiver and partner. Yet, the secret wasn't the only thing making life complicated. Aisha noticed other strange behaviors. Sometimes Richard would receive late-night calls and disappear for hours. She overheard conversations about business deals that sounded risky and dangerous. She met some of Richard's old friends who warned her to be careful and told stories of enemies and threats to Richard's empire. The mansion that once felt like a safe haven now seemed filled with shadows. Aisha realized that being married to a billionaire wasn't just about luxury. It came with responsibility, risks, and challenges she had never imagined. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Richard shared more about his life. He told her about betrayals from people he once trusted, about family secrets that had divided them, and about enemies who still wanted to harm him. Aisha listened, sometimes shocked, sometimes scared, but always determined to stand by him. Through all this, their relationship deepened. They were no longer just a young woman and an old man from different worlds. They were partners facing life's difficulties together. Aisha learned to be strong, patient, and wise beyond her years. Richard found comfort and hope in her presence, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Despite the challenges, there were moments of joy. They celebrated small victories, like successful business deals or good health reports. They laughed at silly jokes and shared quiet dinners. Aisha started to see the beauty in their unusual love story. A story of trust, courage, and the strength to face the unknown. But deep down, Aisha knew that more surprises awaited. The world of billionaires was full of secrets, and she was just beginning to uncover them. What other truths was Richard hiding? How would their life change as the weeks went by? The answers were not clear, but Aisha was ready to face whatever came next. She had chosen this path, and no matter how hard it got, she would not turn back. After everything that had happened, the marriage, the secrets, the hidden invention, and the dangers, Aisha and Richard found themselves standing at a new beginning. They had faced many challenges together, and now the most important moment of their journey was about to come. Life in the mansion was no longer about luxury or comfort. It was about protecting something valuable and facing threats that could come from anywhere. Aisha had grown stronger, braver, and more determined than ever. She was no longer the poor student who had married a billionaire out of hope. She was a woman ready to fight for the future she believed in. Richard, too, was different. The burden he had carried alone for years was now shared. He felt lighter, more hopeful, because Aisha was by his side. Their bond had grown from love to true partnership, a partnership built on trust, respect, and a shared mission. But the world outside was not calm. The secret invention they protected was highly sought after. Powerful people wanted to steal it or use it for their own gain. There were moments when danger seemed very close. Unknown enemies watching their every move, messages warning them to give up the secret, and even attempts to break into the mansion. Despite the risks, Aisha and Richard knew they couldn't hide forever. The invention had the power to change the world in a good way, if used wisely. It could provide clean energy, save millions, and bring peace. Keeping it hidden was protecting it, but sharing it was the real goal. They began planning carefully. They would reveal the invention at the right time in the right way with people they trusted. Until then, they tightened security, moved cautiously, and prepared for the moment when their secret could no longer be hidden. Aisha had learned so much in these weeks. She understood business, technology, and the importance of trust. She met with experts who helped them protect the invention and talked to lawyers who worked to keep it safe. She also learned about Richard's past, how hard he had worked, the sacrifices he had made, and the pain he had endured. Her respect for him grew deeper every day. But more than that, she loved him for his courage and kindness. Richard wasn't just a billionaire or a man with secrets. He was someone who had chosen her to share his life and trust her with his heart. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset from the mansion's terrace, Richard spoke softly. "Aisha, you have changed my life. You have given me hope and strength when I thought there was none left." Aisha smiled, feeling warmth in her heart. "We will face whatever comes together," she said. "I believe in us." Their love was now stronger than any challenge, but fate was not done testing them. One night the mansion's security alarm went off. Aisha and Richard were alerted immediately. They rushed to the control room and saw that someone was trying to break into the underground vault where the invention was kept. The security team acted quickly and police were called. The intruders were caught before they could reach the vault, but the incident was a clear warning. Their enemies were close, and they were dangerous. Aisha felt fear but also determination. This was a sign that they had to move faster with their plans. They could no longer wait quietly in the shadows. The next weeks were filled with meetings and preparations. Aisha took a leading role working with Richard and his team to develop a safe way to share the invention. They reached out to trusted partners, scientists, and government officials who they believed would protect the technology's positive use. The day of the big announcement finally arrived. Aisha stood beside Richard on a stage in front of a crowd of reporters, scientists, and world leaders. She felt nervous but proud. She looked at Richard, who gave her a reassuring smile. Richard began to speak about the invention and its potential to change the world. He spoke honestly about the dangers they had faced and the hope they had for a better future. Then Aisha took the microphone and shared her own story, how she had come from a humble background and found love and strength through this journey. The audience listened, moved by their honesty and courage. The invention was unveiled, and the world reacted with amazement and hope. After the announcement, life changed again. Aisha and Richard became symbols of hope and resilience. They traveled to different countries, working to share the invention safely and fairly. Their story inspired many, showing that love and trust could overcome even the toughest challenges. But their journey was not just about the invention or the fame it brought. It was about the bond they had formed, the trust they had built, and the strength they had discovered within themselves. Aisha knew that the road ahead would not always be easy. There would be more obstacles and dangers. But she also knew that with Richard by her side, she could face anything. Together, they had turned a story of an unlikely marriage into a powerful journey of love, courage, and hope. From a poor student marrying an elderly billionaire, Aisha had become a woman who changed the world and found a love that was stronger than any secret or challenge. Their story was proof that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings could lead to the most incredible endings.